Thank you so much, everybody, for coming tonight. I really appreciate it, and I'm really happy to meet you all and connect with you all. And I'm excited to see so many new faces to me and familiar faces. So my name is Tamar, and I'm from UAW Local 7902, and I work in the communications department as one of the social media managers. And I've been on staff at the UAW for about a year and a bit. And before that, I was a professor of design and communications at the New School, which is a college represented by the UAW in New York City. And I also worked at a lot of large media corporations like Nickelodeon, MTV, Logo, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really my great pleasure to use the skills that I learned in the corporate world to defeat the corporations. That's very exciting to me. So I'm very happy to be with you tonight. So let me start by just sharing my slides. Okay, cool. And if something happens in the slides, don't move. And I'm talking about a lot of, changes in the slides and you're not seeing that, let me know. Also, because I'm showing slides, I'm only seeing like a few of you. So feel free if you want to ask a question during the presentation to just unmute and ask a question. That's not a problem. And I may also, solicit answers to questions from you. So, feel free to interact with me, interact with others. And there'll also be time for questions later at the end. Yeah, so that's me on the picket line a few years ago when my local was on strike for about a month. And today we're here to talk about social media through the lens of labor activism. So I know that you all are Luca communicators and you probably use social media a lot already, or certainly you do communications work for your local. But I'm here to talk about how to use social media in an optimal way that helps to build power in your local, in your region, and beyond. So I like to call social media the digital picket line. It's the place for us as union members to flaunt our power, to show off our solidarity, and to take credit for all the good work that members are doing in our local. Social media is also a great place to build connection, to build power. I'll talk about how to do all of that. I'll be talking about social media through the lens of organizing principles. So how we can use organizing principles to develop a long-term social media strategy to build power. So one of the sort of first principles of organizing, and when I say organizing, I mean, moving people to action, right? Moving people to collective action. But one of the first principles of organizing is to meet people where they are. And today, a lot of people are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It's kind of like the workplace water cooler, the place where members might gather, share information, look for information, discuss issues that they're having at work, issues that they're having in the local. So it's very crucial that we have a presence on these platforms and that we're connecting with members on these platforms and that we have an intentional presence. For most union members, and we might think of like new union members especially, their only interaction with the union is on their phone, on social media, in this kind of water cooler environment. To give you an example from my workplace, I worked in a college. We didn't have a union hall. We hardly ever saw our coworkers, so really connected with people mostly online. So social media isn't just a box for us to check, but for our least engaged members, it's the place that the conversation starts. And today, at least half of US adults get part of their news from social media. And the younger you go, like teenagers and young adults, the more they look to social media rather than traditional news outlets. Social media platforms are also becoming search engines. So people are searching for information. So let's say someone's searching for information about how to unionize or information about something that's going on in the local, they're very likely to look for it first on social media. And TikTok in particular is growing for younger audiences and becoming like a search engine for younger audiences. So many younger folks use TikTok over Google. They prefer it, they trust it more as a place to search for information. So in that quiz that you saw, the one fact that wasn't true was that 64% of people prefer TikTok over Google. It's actually Gen Z. 64% of Gen Z prefers TikTok over Google for finding information. So, TikTok and other social platforms are a really great place to connect with our youngest members. As communicators, we are the mirror and the megaphone for members. So the mirror is a way to reflect to the membership their power, right? So by putting up images and videos and so on social media, we're showing members how powerful they are. We're showing them taking action. We're showing ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And our job as communicators is to help people see their own power, to help people understand that they are powerful as a collective and to use it. So that's the idea of the mirror. And then the megaphone is the idea that as communicators, we're turning that power up really high. We are speaking in one voice very loudly and clearly. We're blasting out and amplifying what members care about, what members want, what members are doing, what members are saying, et cetera, et cetera. And in the new UAW, we don't say one thing to members and one thing to the press and one thing to companies, but we have the same message for everyone. So, there's no fear about sharing it publicly. Our job as communicators is to polish the mirror, crank up the megaphone, and amplify what the members are doing. But the mirror and the megaphone, they only work if the members are in motion, they're speaking up, and they're making good trouble. So our job as communicators is to encourage that and reward that with coverage on social media. So people come to social media for a lot of different reasons. They come to engage, they come to be engaged, they come to be educated, to learn, they come to be inspired, they come to connect, they come to be motivated, agitated, organized, excited, right? All of these things, motivated. So people are coming to social media looking for that, which means that we already have an audience that is ready to be organized. And every social post is a chance for us to build power and community in our locals. So we want to create and to post in a way that is very strategic and intentional so that really we're thinking about every post, not just I'm just posting because I need to post, but I'm posting in order to build power. And I'll talk about what I mean. So in the world of organizing, right, this idea of moving people to collective action, there's also a principle or a rule about how to have a conversation. And when you have a sort of one-on-one conversation or what's sometimes called an organizing conversation, first you listen and then you speak, right? So I was taught by my organizing mentors 80% listening, 20% speaking. So first you listen to hear what do members have to say, what's important to them, what do they value, what do they care about, what are they struggling with, what do they want to learn. And then when we speak to those things that they told us. So in social media, it's the same thing. First, we need to listen and hear what do people want to know, right? What do they care about? Maybe what don't they understand? What makes them feel seen? And then our social content responds to that, right? So the first step, if you're new to social media and creating accounts, is to kind of see what people are talking about and what people are interested in. If you don't have your own pages yet, you could look at other locals, you could look at the UAW page, etc. But it's really important that the social content that you're creating is meeting those needs and those questions and those struggles that people are having. So, for example, in my local, in higher ed, people are paid very little. It's considered a prestigious job, but the pay is extremely low. And so, one of the things that people care about deeply is pay. And so, in my local, one of the things that we posted about the most was how little we get paid. And so another aspect of organizing is this framework, and there are these different frameworks, but one sort of well-known one is agitate, educate, and organize. And another version of that I like is called AHA, anger, hope, and action. So what that means, if we go back to the sort of typical organizing conversation, is we want to hear what people are upset about. We want to encourage them actually to be upset and to be angry, and to tell us what's wrong, so that we can then offer collective solutions, right? So when we do an organizing conversation, when we have a conversation with someone, we want to hear what they care about, and we might even like agitate them and encourage them to share the things that they're angry about. So anger is a really great motivator for change. And so as organizers, you shouldn't be afraid of anger. It's actually an exciting emotion. It can be a great emotion to channel. In social media, it's kind of the same thing. Like you've probably all seen that people put like angry faces on social media and angry comments, and we can channel that. So we shouldn't be afraid of this kind of agitated, angry state of mind, but rather use it to move people. So I'll break it down a little bit more in the next slides. So social media posts can be really good for agitating because the social media algorithms are based on human emotions. And if you haven't seen it, I really recommend watching the documentary called The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which talks about how social media algorithms are designed to tap into people's emotions. And the most successful social media posts are the ones that trigger emotions, particularly anger, outrage, love, laughter, curiosity, right? All these things. And so every time you create a post, you should think about what emotion you're trying to evoke or engage. And like I said, don't be afraid of anger. Anger is really very powerful when it's channeled towards action and social justice. And love and solidarity are also really powerful emotions that we can channel. So if you look at these posts right here, I'm curious to hear, and feel free to just unmute yourself and speak, which emotions you think these posts are trying to tap into. And there's no wrong answer to this, so feel free to just jump in. No one jumps in, I'll just call on somebody whose name I know.
I think the human needs before corporate greed kind of grabs at your heartstrings a little bit and puts a human face on an issue that we need a human face on. And it's not just facts and figures, it's people.
Definitely, definitely. So it could be empathy, right? Solidarity. Could also be a little bit of outrage here to see like a child holding a sign on a picket line or on in a rally. Very true. Anybody else want to chime in about any of these?
I think that the second photo, the middle one, if you will, I think it's more meant to kind of invoke anger. I know that the sign says I am a little upset, but it does look like it would also ties into around the time that the strike was going on. So maybe it's meant to kind of convey, the emotion that we are kind of on the attack.
Definitely, definitely. This is from the picket line of Local 2250 and the stand-up strike. They were one of the first locals to go out on strike. And you're right, there's like something here about anger, like this man is having to stand on the picket line in the middle of the night, right? They had a 24/7 picket. But it's also a little bit funny right? And you can see that it was liked by 2,502 people because it t- it it channeled or touched emotion in some way. Anything else? Anyone you want to say anything about post 3 or 4? I know there's someone here from 23, 25, so maybe. Oh, there you are. Go ahead, Navroz.
Hey, Tamar. Yeah,
Hey.
for post 4, I think it's invoking more like it's forward looking, it's alluding to our collective power. So I think evoking like I think it's like empowering, hopeful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Definitely. And for folks who maybe aren't members of your local, like myself or others, you look at that and you're like, wow, they are aligning their contracts to the same date and they're going to negotiate together. That's so inspiring. I immediately want to run back to my local and do that too. So it's very motivating. Yeah. Um, Anybody else want to speak about post 3? Felina, can I call on you?
Sure. I was going to say also humor. I don't think I have anything more original than that. Um,
Yeah. Humor, solidarity. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
there's a kind of sweetness to it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of sweetness, right, in a straight white man saying that he supports the LGBTQ community. It's very heartwarming. So, moving on, I wanted to show you this quote from Eric Blanc, who's a former UAW member. Now he's a professor at Rutgers, and he studies the use of social media in workplace organizing, or what sometimes is called digital organizing or digital labor activism. He's been studying it for a while. He's, I think, about to publish a book about it. And he analyzes the way that workers are using digital tools to amplify their organizing work, and he says he learned that when combined with deep workplace organizing, meaning one-on-one conversations, rallies, all of the traditional escalation tools, that social media is a really great tool for agitation. So like getting people kind of like engaged, outraged, agitated, angry can be really helpful to get the members interested in what's going on. And also public opinion on your side. So if the public sees like, hey, this boss is making, 500 times what the workers are making, they become outraged. They want to support, right? So you get sort of outward support, external support, and internal support from agitating. So these are some examples of agitational posts. So their goal is to make people angry. They also do other things, right? They might also make you laugh and stuff like that. But talking about like how much a CEO makes in comparison to a regular rank and file worker, talking about corporate greed, talking about how the bosses are lucky to have us rather than this idea that we're lucky to have a job, talking about the number of injuries that people get working in auto, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all posts that are tapping into that sense of anger. What I think is, a little bit different in social media from an organizing conversation is obviously when you have a conversation with someone one-on-one and you're trying to move them to action, there's a sort of like a linear series of steps that you might be going through where you're agitating, educating them about collective action, and then asking them to move to action. Social media is less linear, right? People see things in pieces. And so there can be a lot of repetition actually of each of these different phases of agitate, educate, and organize. So for example, in the UAW social media, we're always doing all of these types of posts, right? Agitational, educational, and trying to move people to action. So when we organize, the next step after agitating someone and kind of getting them to talk about a problem is offering some education, or you can call it hope, about, how that issue can be solved and how working collectively can solve the issue. So when we educate, we're always tying it back to the agitation, to the problem, to the struggle, because that's the why, right? The reason to take action is because of the problem. So these are examples of educational posts that we've done on the UAW page. You can see on the left side that these are kind of vintage posts. They're using posters from UAW's past, photos from the past, posters from the past. And these are very, very popular posts. And of course, as a social media manager, they're really easy to create because they already exist, right? You just have to find them and post them. But what it does when you show these vintage photos, posters, etc., is they're showing us as UAW members, like, wow, we're connected to this amazing tradition of courageous struggle. And it's like this family that we belong to. We have role models that we can look at, we can take inspiration from. And also looking back to the past shows us, oh, if they did it, we can do it too. So for example, like this one in the top left corner about automation, is very relevant, even though it's from the 50s or 60s, I think. It's very relevant to what's happening today, right? Where a lot of jobs, like even my job as a graphic designer, is being automated away by things like, Chat GPT, etc. So looking at the past shows us what's possible. And then looking also at the present, like what are questions that people have right now. So the 6 posts that you see on the right side of the screen are things that people might commonly ask, like how do dues work and how does a strike work, etc. So these are questions that new members always have. They're evergreen. And so once you create these graphics, or you can grab them from the UAW page too, they're very popular and you can post them over and over because there's always new members who want the answers to these questions. And I wanted to show you quickly the UAW education page. If you don't follow them, please follow them. They do this great thing called Think About It Thursdays. So just the name of that, I think, is really cool because like, okay, on Thursday, I should look out for, a cool educational post from the UAW. The other thing I wanted you to notice here is like in the post on the left side, they have 79 shares. And that is really great. Like they only have 38 likes, but they have 79 shares. And shares are what we want and what we prefer because shares are what gets our content seen by people outside of just those who follow us. So shares are a really great measure of success. And you'll see that the social media platforms are ranking shares. So like if a post is shared a lot, it's ranked higher and then it's shown to more people. So it's like a cycle of goodness. The more it gets shared, the more it gets seen. And the last step in this kind of framework of agitate, educate, organize is organize, right? And organizing means moving people to action, getting them to take a step, even a small step, like signing a petition or going to a rally or signing a union card. It depends on the situation. So some examples of posts that are designed to move people to action. You might remember some of these from the stand-up strike. So all of these posts are telling people, here's a step that you can take, right? You can vote yes for our retirees, or you can rally to make things right at the big 3, or you can go to the Luca conference to sharpen your communication skills. So we're always tying back the action that we're asking people to do back to the why. Like, why are we doing this, right? We're doing this because there's injustice, and taking this step is going to help to solve it if we all do it together. So I'm going to talk a little bit about social media campaign strategy. So there are kind of 3 main components to developing a social media campaign strategy. And what I mean by a strategy is like you want to have a plan that'll make your life easier if you plan ahead. But also strategy gives an intention to what you're doing. So you want to define some goals, and we'll talk about some possible goals. You want to get to know your audience. And you want to use the best practices of each platform. So, the social media platforms, they change all the time. They try to copy each other and they're different sort of attributes change. And so if you are tapped into that, you can use that to your advantage. So these are the sort of three main ingredients of a social media campaign strategy. So the first step is to know your audience. So this might seem like a simple thing, but we want to figure out who is our audience, right? Sorry, I'm just having trouble with this slide. Here we go. So we might have like a primary audience if we're doing social media for a local, and that audience may be subdivided into like longtime members and new members, right? They know different things, they may have different goals, they may have different questions, and so you want your post to speak to at least those two types of members, right? Longtime members and new members, but there might be other subdivisions in your local. There might be divisions by gender, by job type, et cetera. So only you and the members of your local know what they are. So these are just examples that I'm giving. A secondary audience could be the families of your members, their spouses, their children, their parents, etc., the local community, other local unions in the area, in your sector, in the UAW, outside the UAW, then the press, and then your employer. And I think this is really important to remember, is that your employer is looking on your social media pages. And so whenever you're posting not just for your members, but you're also posting to show the employer how powerful you are. So keep that in mind. If there's a Facebook page that nobody's posted there since 1996, maybe Facebook didn't exist then, but you know what I mean. If no one's posted for a while, it feels dormant. It feels like maybe there isn't much going on. There isn't much member engagement going on. Another thing to think about is, it depends where you are in your point in the struggle. Like if you've just, let's say, ratified a contract, then maybe, the employer isn't as key an audience, but they're always watching. But, different times in your struggle could bring sort of different audiences to the fore. So that's something also important to analyze, is where you are in your different struggle or campaign, and which audiences are you, is it most important for you to speak to right now? The next part of the strategy is defining goals. So, again, only you know what the best goals are for your local, but I'm giving some examples here. So promoting events, right, is a really great thing to do with social media in order to get people to be aware of them and to get people to turn out. So you want to promote before, you want to promote during, maybe you do some kind of like live stream, and then also after, so that the people who missed it might feel like, oh, I missed that and it looked really cool, I'm going to come to the next one. So you'll grow interest in future events, you'll express the values of the local and the unit so people want to engage, make people feel proud and make them feel solidarity and make them feel a sense of belonging to the local or the region or whatever it may be. You can inform, educate, inoculate, you can foster community, so you can increase engagement, and you can build a larger following. So these are just examples. Sorry, let me go back. These are just examples. I would suggest maybe starting with 1 or 2 goals and then adapting as you go, depending on where you are. So the third thing I said was being aware of sort of the current best practices by a social platform. And I wanted to give you 2 examples of that. So on the left side, what you're seeing is a screenshot from TikTok. And TikTok this year sort of launched this collaboration with another app called CapCut. I think they own it actually. And it's an app that allows you to turn still images very quickly into videos. So like this is a video of a cat like bobbing its head to the music. And we used a picture of a tweet, and TikTok prioritizes videos that are made with CapCut. So they're easy to make, they're quick, and they're also prioritized by the algorithm. So knowing that, helps us create more content more quickly and also helps our content be seen more. On the right side, something that Instagram did this year was created the possibility for collaborative posts. So you can see here, this is a post where UAW International is collaborating with UAW Education. Sometimes we do collaborative posts with locals or with regions or multiple regions. So if you're aware of that, right, and you do a collaborative post, you can reach a larger audience. So that's an exciting new feature that helps you improve your visibility and your reach. And so if you're newer to social media, you might be wondering, you might be a little bit overwhelmed about which platform to use. There are a lot of social media platforms. These are the ones that the UAW is on right now. You don't have to be on all of these platforms, but rather I would say start where your members are. Which platforms do they use? Which ones do they like? You could poll them. Where do they want to get information? And as we talked about a little bit before, platform usage varies by age, sometimes by profession, and sometimes by location. So TikTok is the fastest growing social media platform. 47% of the users are under 30, so it's a really good platform to reach younger workers. And Facebook is the largest worldwide platform. So what it said earlier in the quiz, 71% of all web traffic is Facebook, which is true. So in my local, for example, local 7902, a lot of the members are designers and artists or just creative people, and they love Instagram because it's focused on visuals. There's a lot of photos and videos. So we focused mainly on Instagram in our strategy. So match your social channel to your members. Maybe you poll them to find out. And this is a way to meet them where they are. And you could, if you're new to this, just start with one channel and then later on more. So now let's talk about some best practices to help you engage and grow your following. So I put these up here so that we can talk a little bit about how people are using their phones today, how people are using social platforms, and the main point is they're using it very fast. People are scrolling very fast, they're multitasking, they're distracted, they're looking at a lot of things at once. If they don't get hooked by 2 to 3 seconds, they move on to something else. And so the main challenge on social media today is to grab people's attention amongst this like very crowded field of competition. So how do you get their attention if they're moving this fast? You create posts that are easy to understand at a glance, easy to grasp in 3 seconds. And so they understand in 3 seconds why this is relevant to them. If people don't understand or if there's too much to read, they just disengage and keep scrolling. So if it's a video, for example, you might want to start with an action shot rather than, let's say, like a long, slow fade up, right? By the time you fade up, they're gone. So start with the most compelling shot. And then if it's a photo or a graphic, keep it very bold, very simple, very easy to read, as little text as possible, and something that's exciting that gets people interested and they want to learn more. They want to stay with it more than that 2 to 3 seconds. The other thing to think about is the difference between what you see when you're the creator and between what they see. So like for me, I'm sitting in front of my laptop, I have my large screen, I have good lighting, I'm seeing things in high resolution, but users, 92% of users are using a very small mobile device, they're distracted, etc. And so what I might be able to see on a big screen, they won't necessarily see as well on a small screen. And we have to remember that and really design for very, very small screens. Like imagine the smallest screen possible and design for that. And a way that you can sort of test your designs or your videos or your graphics is like, does it work on a small screen? Like look on something very small and see if it works. Another thing to think about is sometimes when you are a social media designer or creator, you're like looking at your feed, you're admiring it, you're like, looks really cool and consistent. But what the user is seeing is not that. People very rarely actually like go to an account and think like, oh, I wonder what, UAW local 7902 posted today. Let me go look at their page, right? That's not how it happens. Rather, they see your post pop up in the middle of tons of other stuff. They might have lots of windows open, they might have lots of tabs, apps, notifications, other people's posts, ads, all these things. And so then your post shows up and hopefully it looks strong, it looks cohesive, it looks recognizable. And they're like, oh my God, I recognize that. Like for example, in my local, we used this like blue and red gradient. That was sort of the branding. I got personally very sick of that blue and red gradient because I was the one creating the graphics. But people who, weren't the ones creating the graphics, just looking at it, were like, oh, there's that, blue and red gradient. That's information from my union. I better stop and read this. So there's something about being very consistent and recognizable that's really important. You can think about like some of the most famous brands that they usually only use two colors so that they can be recognized. Like McDonald's uses red and gold, Dunkin' Donuts, pink and orange, Coca-Cola, red and white, etc. So seeing those color combinations together is like meeting a familiar friend. So moving on from here is this idea of like visual consistency. If we're visually consistent, people can recognize us. If all of our platforms look different than each other or the posts look different than each other, it's like, the different personalities and maybe not so recognizable or doesn't have a kind of a level of integrity. So here we're seeing the Teamsters, and we can see how consistent they are with their colors, their logo, their textures across all of their platforms. And then, visual consistency doesn't have to be boring. So for example, this is a unit of student workers in New York, and they've chosen these 4 colors that they work with consistently. But, the posts are very bold, they're using different shapes. And so anytime you see one of these posts, you're like, oh yes, that's New Swoo, I know who that is. And then here's another example from the Teamsters. These are their holiday posts. So you can see that they've limited the number of colors so that people recognize them. They've limited to a certain illustration style. And so this is very helpful for the user because they recognize it, but it's also helpful for you as the creator because then you aren't designing something new every time, but you have guidelines to work with. You have colors, fonts, illustrations to choose from. And you look consistent and professional. Here's another example from the Teamsters where they're using what I like to call campaign thinking, right? So this is a campaign about working conditions at UPS. And so all of the posts about UPS are in these colors to tell a story over time through a series of posts. Because when we're doing social media, like I was mentioning before, it's like bits and pieces, right? And so connecting everything together with the color helps the viewer know, okay, this is about UPS. And, fonts and color choices are kind of like a language that signals to your viewers information without, like, they don't even have to read this. They just see the colors and they know what it's about. So it's a sort of like shortcut into the viewer's mind. So in order to build engagement and a larger following, consistency, not just visual consistency, but consistency in posting is really key and very important. So developing a content calendar can help you with planning. Posting once a day is recommended, but if you don't have the capacity, you could start by posting once a week at a regular day and time so that there's a regular quality to it, like we saw before with the education department where they post every Thursday. And then think of your posts as sort of mini campaigns. So you're telling a story, but you're telling it in these pieces. And by not telling the whole story at once, you're creating curiosity. You're making people excited to learn what happens next. You're taking your viewers on a journey. And so in terms of like when to post and how often to post, I've created a very detailed handout, it's a digital handout, which I'll give you at the end, that will tell you like how often to post, when to post. It'll help you figure out, cadence. But basically, post regularly and consistently, whatever that means for you, and then vary up your post types. And the reason I say that is because, some people are attracted to text-based posts. They like to read. Some people are very visual. Videos are a great way to reach new followers because they get shown to people who aren't following. Some people, for example, only look at stories and they don't look at the feed or the grid. So kind of speaking to all of these ways that people use social media is going to help you get the largest audience. And this is just an example of a simple content calendar based on the idea that you post once a week on Wednesday. So Wednesday, because it's the middle of the week, is usually considered like the best day to post. So if you can only post once a week, maybe post on Wednesday, and find the times that work best for your members. One of the things you can think about is like, when do members have breaks, or when are they most likely using their phones? Like for professors in higher ed, there's set bell times, so you might schedule the post when you know that people have breaks. And then these are some guidelines and suggestions from Facebook about what kind of content works and engages people. And so it's similar to what I was talking about before. You want posts that engage people, that make people want to talk, that make people want to comment, that educate people where they get to learn something new, or that excites people, like we were talking about before with Navruz, where I hear about this local doing this really cool thing in New York City, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that too. So, one thing that we're focusing on in the UAW social media is centering the members. The rank and file members are the heroes of the story, more than, elected officials or leaders. And so posts that show members, maybe you see your local here or yourself in here, posts of people work really well because people love to see themselves. They get excited to see themselves, but they also get excited to see other members and to see what other members are doing. It helps them feel part of something greater than themselves. So create posts that make people feel seen. And to get material, you can think about like, what are members doing? Let me go capture what they're doing. What are they talking about? What do they care about? And think about showing a diversity of members, a diversity in age, gender, seniority, cultural background, etc., sector, so that everybody feels seen, right? Sometimes there's people who, who are always there. They're always on the picket line. They're always at the rally. They're always volunteering. And so they get photographed a lot and they get seen a lot. But try to, expand beyond that pool of regulars. And one way you can do that is by sharing posts that members have posted. So it doesn't all have to be your creation, but just like looking on members' pages and finding things that are relevant and that align with the brand of the local. When we do show leaders, at least this is what we do in the UAW accounts, we focus on showing them serving the members, responding to the members, being transparent with the members. Of course, leaders are also members, but we focus more on rank and file members. Like I said, they're like the celebrities in the UAW. And they're the highest authority in the union. So these are examples of member-centered posts that did really well. And you can see the post on the left with a picture of Michelle, who I met at Black Lake, and I interviewed her. It got over 1,000 posts. and 131 shares. And I have to say that I know that like Jesse, who I think is here in this meeting, shared this post so many times and shared it in all of these groups and made sure that it was seen so much that that the post got this many likes, shares, et cetera, but also because Michelle's story is a really interesting story where she talks about, being a first generation union member and kind of learning to connect to the lineage of her local, which happens to be one of the original locals in Flint, Michigan from the sit-down strikes in the 1930s and 40s. So it was a post that did extremely well for all of those reasons, the sharing, but also because it focused on a member and told a relatable story about a member. And then these other two posts, the same, like the middle post is about a member who decided to create a garden in his workplace and continues to do so. And, the last post is about members helping each other. And so these are like very relatable, feel good stories. And that's why they do well on social media. And some more examples of members in their community services committees. And I want to ask you, and feel free to unmute and speak up, what you think these posts accomplish, like these types of posts that have a lot of people in them together, or at least like more than one or two people. What are they accomplishing for us? What's their
I think
intention?
they're promoting solidarity and kind of showing that we do have active member involvement.
Definitely, yeah. So they're showing solidarity, active engagement, active involvement. Anything else that you think that this is doing?
I think it makes people want to join in the next time or want to be a part of it because they see a group of people engaging.
Definitely, definitely. So it taps into like fear of missing out, right? Wanting to be part of it. Anything else you think, like in terms of the employer, what is this doing?
Not exactly as far as the employer, but things like this are kind of useful for our public opinion. So the public sees what the UAW is doing beyond just fighting for wages and working conditions. When they see us giving back to our communities in this type of way, it helps improve their opinion of us.
Absolutely. So it creates a relationship with a community. It reflects the good work that everybody's doing because, like, this good work is happening, but if it's not visible on social media, maybe people don't know that it's happening. And it taps into this core value, right? Of we don't just fight for ourselves, we fight for everyone, we fight for our community. We are our community. Absolutely. Anything else that you guys or you all think in terms of the employer? Like, what does an employer feel when they see this kind of thing?
I think it'd be kind of intimidating to an employer to
Yeah,
see the kind of solidarity and community and the numbers in
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. They're scared. It makes them fearful. Whenever they see large numbers of people coming together, that's the scariest thing in the world for them. So it's really exciting, I think, to post with lots of people in them because it does this sort of like it has this sort of like triple effect, right? It makes the members excited and potentially engaged, makes the community support you, and it makes the employer fearful, right? It's wonderful. It does a lot. The other thing is inviting engagement. So this is one of a relatively early posts that I did when I started working for the UAW. And it's talking about wearing red on Wednesday, and it's just asking people two questions like, what does wearing a red shirt on Wednesday mean to you? I didn't know anything about this until I started working for the International. Um, and we also ask people like post a picture with your red shirt in the comments or tag us and we'll share you with your picture. So we got like, hundreds of people posting pictures of themselves, of their like father, of their coworkers, all these things so sweet and heartwarming. I couldn't show them all in this slide, just by asking questions. So that's another way, is to like invite people into this conversation, so that it's not just a space to talk at people. It's not like a megaphone where you're just announcing things, but it's a conversation that you're inviting. And you know, you get to learn from members, members get to speak to each other. So it builds engagement, it builds connection, it builds solidarity, like Carissa was saying before. Another thing that's really helpful when you're thinking about your social content that you're planning is something that's called content buckets. Sometimes people call this content pillars. They're kind of categories that you can create for yourself. So I'm just showing you an example of mine, but yours could be different. And I think about like, I want to fill these buckets, or I want to have content that satisfies these buckets. So humanizing the members is really important, showing that they're human, that we should care about them, like the image we saw with the child before, or seeing all these you know, fun pictures of members makes us feel like they're human. Because what the employer does, as you've probably seen, is they constantly try to dehumanize the members. They talk about the members like they're greedy, like they're selfish, like asking for too much, right? All these things. And so I think an important key for us is to humanize the members. And then for me, these other buckets: agitate, educate, move to action, and also connecting to larger struggles, so that people can see like our struggle here in this, you know, factory, or in this university, or in this office, or whatever, is similar to something that's going on somewhere else. And that, you know, helps build solidarity across sectors, across regions, you know, across unions, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, for you, when you do your social strategy, you might choose like 3 to 5 buckets, and then think about, you know, how does my content fit into these buckets? That also helps you be strategic. So you're not just posting just to post, but you're posting with a sort of reason and intention behind it. So here I'm just going to show quickly a few slides about kind of these are results of a survey done by Hootsuite, which is a company that like surveys people on social media. And so they did a survey asking just everyday people, you know, what causes them to unfollow accounts on social media. And the main thing that people said is inauthentic, repetitive, boring, clickbait, trying too hard to get attention, or excessive promotion or selling. So this is something important to think about, because, you know, we're not trying to sell stuff to people, but we are trying to get them to participate in stuff. And so if we only post about like, come to my rally, or come to this, you know, educational event or whatever, we might get on people's nerves. But if we post, you know, other content, and like a smaller percentage of that kind of asking people to do stuff, we may be more successful. So this is just like a little bit more detail about that, what people don't like, right? They don't like this feeling of like self-promotion, or content that feels low quality, or accounts that don't respond to comments or DMs. Also, people unfollow. Even like if you know, go to an account and you see that there are a ton of negative comments and no one's moderating that, or nobody's responding to people's questions, it feels like a sort of a dead zone, right? So it's important that it should feel like interactive, like people are being listened to and heard. And then, you know, what do people like? So people like, and this is really interesting for us as educators, because I think that communicators are educators. 56% say that they like content that tells them or teaches them something new. And then directly after that makes me laugh. And directly after that inspires me. So that's really exciting for us in our sort of framework as organizers, that we have this, you know, audience that actually is eager to learn something new. And then what makes people want to share? People share if they agree, or if they find something funny or informative or inspiring. They also sometimes post things that they disagree with, like in a sort of outraged way. So that could also be a reason. But when we're thinking about sort of how does a post gain value and build engagement and build power, it's a post that's shared a lot. So we want to think about the posts that we create to make them shareable, right? So this kind of guidance will help us think about what would be shareable. And there's also this thing called the shareability test, which is that in order to make a post shareable, it has to meet 2 out of 3 of these bullets. One is, will it make us feel, will it make the audience feel seen? I mean, will it make them feel something like love or hate when they view the content? They'll have a relationship to it in some way, they'll have an opinion on it. Or will this post facilitate connection with other audience members? I would say that the one about like the red shirt is one of those. And then will the post provide some sort of service or information in an entertaining way, in a valuable way? And you'll see that when people share, but also when people save the post and they want to go back to it and look at it again. And it's a piece of information that they feel is important and valuable. So in social media, we have something called the 80-20 rule, and it's this idea that 80% of your posts should be educational, informational, or entertaining, and 20% should be directly promoting the brand. So now again, we're union members. We're not exactly like selling a product or promoting a brand, but we want people to come to our events. We want to move people to action. So what I think is interesting to think about here is that it's similar to the 80-20 rule that we have in organizing, right? 80% listening, 20% speaking. It's not an exact one-to-one comparison, but it's giving people sort of the things that they want, the things that they enjoy, the things that make them laugh. And then once we have them in like this good frame of mind, then making an ask, right? People don't like to receive a hard sell and feel like they're being told what to do, but they want to feel like they're choosing to do something because they want to. And so, like, if you want people to attend an event, if you just post the same event over and over, it's unlikely that they'll come. But if you create content that is around the topic of that event that gets them interested, then you're priming them and preparing them to be interested in your event. So this is just an example from my local. This is a part of a campaign that we did nearing contract expiration. And a lot of these posts are about pay and about the contract. And my local was in this situation where, it's been around for like 20 years and people were quite checked out. And we wanted to get people engaged again and get them interested. And so a lot of the posts that we did was like about how little we get paid, so that they would start to feel agitated and angry and feel like this was a collective problem that we could solve together. And then they would start to participate in the initiatives that we had, like our educational workshops, we had open bargaining, all of these kinds of things. But these posts sort of like primed them or prepared them to start to engage by agitating them. And then I wanted to give just some tips about writing. So one thing to think about with social media, if you look over here where the arrow is a lot of the captions that are written on social media get cut off like this. So like the first 10 or 15 words get seen and then the rest gets cut off. And so something that's really important to think about is to front load the most important information. I heard someone describe this as like, start from your second or third sentence. Like you might have a desire to sort of like explain and introduce, but it's actually better to sort of jump straight into the action and the most interesting thing, and then come back to the explanation in order to hook people and get them interested in what you're talking about. The other thing to think about with writing is to write things in a way that maybe make people like think about things in a new way. Like I like this tweet by Ben Dichter where he's talking about like the process of a contract campaign, but he's using what's is it called, like the 5 stages of grief or something like that. So he's making this kind of funny comparison. So taking sort of things that maybe people are used to hearing about, like contracts and strikes, etc., but sort of spinning them in a new way to make them interesting. The other thing is like posting provocative things, like this Eat the Rich post was for some reason incredibly controversial on our social media. And controversial is great because it gets people talking. They might be angry, they might like it, they might share it, they might ask questions. So all of that is good. Like even if people dislike your post, it's good for engagement. And then, another thing to think about is keeping your account secure. So, there's a lot of imposters out there who might pretend to be your local or your local president. We've seen a lot of imposters for our union president, Sean Fain. So if you can, get authentication so that people know that your page is really you and it's coming from integrity and an authentic voice. And then lastly, accessibility. So accessibility is this idea that making your post accessible to as many users as possible, being inclusive, and that might mean making posts available to people who have a visual impairment by putting in alt text or detailed captions because they're using a screen reader that reads the posts to them. Or putting in subtitles on a video, writing captions that are very clear. So like if, in the union world, there's a lot of like jargon and there's a lot of acronyms. And so just writing from a sort of beginner's mindset, not everybody knows, let's say what, EAP is or SAV or, all of these acronyms that we use a lot. So always explaining those things. Avoiding language that is ableist, that speaks to certain abilities. Sharing diverse voices makes people feel included. And then making your images very high contrast. This might sound like a very simple thing, but it's really important for people to be able to read what's in your posts. If there's very low contrast, it's hard to read. I'm seeing that more and more as I age, that high contrast stuff is much faster to read. And then putting text in the caption, so not making like posts that have tons and tons of text in the visual, but rather think of the visual as sort of like this appetizer or this invitation to get people to read the caption. And using simple fonts that are easy to read, and putting emojis and hashtags at the end of the caption, not at the beginning and not in the middle, because if you think about how a screen reader reads, like imagine that it says like clap emoji, clap emoji, clap emoji, and only then do you actually get to the caption. So it's irritating if you're reading with a screen reader. So those are some points about accessibility, and there's more in the handout that I'll give you. Hashtags, write them like this so that they can be read well by a screen reader. So you capitalize each word. And this is like just a quick recap of the things that we spoke about. And I will give you these slides so you don't have to remember any of this. One thing I'll just say is that, I know that all of you are members that have jobs, but then you're also Luca communicators on top of that in your spare time. And so don't take it all on yourself, but rather form a little team, maybe a team with like a writer, a designer, a scheduler, someone who reaches out to the community for content. So something like maybe 3 or 4 people to manage social media and make it less stressful and more fun. And more collaborative. And then I'll drop these links in the chat too, but there's a link to this slide deck. And once you get the slide deck, you'll see all my notes in it, and there are links in there and so on. And the interactive handout also has a lot of links and useful information that I didn't go over right now. Also want to recommend, if folks aren't part of this digital media working group created by the AFL-CIO, they have constant trainings on social media, so you can learn about sort of new features and best practices, because the social platforms are changing all the time. So let me pause here and see if you have questions. I know that there were some things in the chat that I couldn't see while I was presenting, so I'll just stop sharing and see if there are questions, or if you want to just ask a question, feel free.
I don't have a question, but I do want to thank you. Like, I did get a lot of information tonight, like probably 4 pages worth. So I do just say thank you for that.
Thank you, Carissa. And it's nice to hear your voice. Like, you're one of the people that I've posted your picture on social media. I've never met you before, but you know, I feel like I'm meeting a rank and file celebrity, and the same goes for every single one of you here. Other questions for folks? Any questions about the things that I said? I
Good
also want to
evening,
make,
Tamara.
yes,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Jesse, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, this is Jesse Kazora. So something that I've been monitoring with my social media use is the whether I'm reaching male, female, and then age groups. For me, the age groups seems to be a consistent trend, not the trend I was looking for. I ended up getting on TikTok in the middle of May. Still haven't figured everything out with that. Don't even know how I'm seeing half the stuff I am, but I'm learning it. But what I'm noticing with the TikTok, the majority of the viewers are 55 and above. That's the overwhelming majority. Then the next majority is 35 to 45. And then there's that small window of the 20s. And I remember you saying in the past that the younger crowd, that's how you reach them right now, is through TikTok, because it's up and coming and growing fast. But I'm not seeing that take off.
That's really
with what I'm doing.
interesting. That's very interesting. I would be interested to take a kind of closer look at your TikTok and see what's going on there. But I'm also not in that age range. So another thing I would suggest is to talk to people in the age range that you want to reach in your membership, and ask them, like, hey, what do you want to learn about? You know, poll them, and find out like why they're not following. Maybe they don't know it exists, or maybe the posts aren't speaking to the questions that they have. One trend that I'm seeing a lot in TikTok is like people responding to questions and sort of using user comments to make videos that answer those questions. That's very popular, but obviously if you're not getting engagement, you don't have those comments to respond to, but you might sort of try to get a sense, sometimes called social listening, where you're sort of watching what's going on in social media, watching trends, watching what questions people have, and then responding to those. So to give you an example, one thing I noticed on the UAW Facebook page is that a lot of members or commenters seem to be very, very concerned about the transition to electric vehicles. So I think something that we can do on our Facebook page, for example, is do posts that explain the transition to EV and how it's going to be a just transition. I think that's something that we can do better to support those members. So I think it all goes back to like talking to members in real life, or through email or through surveys or whatever is the best way for you, finding out what they want, and then starting to create content that does that. I hope that helps, but I'm happy also to like meet with you privately and look over your accounts and give some, you know, more personalized advice as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's in the chat. I dropped it in the chat.
Okay, great. I'll look at it later, and I know I have your phone number and your email, so I'll definitely reach out to you.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I'm happy to do that for everybody. In a moment, I'll share my email address, and I want to encourage you all to, email me, especially if you want to if you want us to share something that's going on in your local, or if you have a question, or you want feedback, or you want help. That's what we're here for. We're here to serve the members, and like I said, you're the heroes of the story, so we're here for you. Other questions? I also have an ask for all of you guys, so don't go yet, please. I want to ask you to do something together. But any other questions or thoughts or okay. So let me just I want to ask you like 2 or 3 things, short asks. So one thing I want to ask you is if you're not already following the UAW on social media, I want to ask you to follow us. And these are all of our accounts, and we follow back. So I try to follow every single local union, every committee, every region, every regional director, et cetera, et cetera. So if you follow us and we haven't followed you, you can email me and be like, hey, Tamar, follow us, and we will. So that's one thing. The other ask that I have is we are looking for volunteer moderators to help us moderate our Facebook page and potentially other accounts as well. And so if that's something that you're interested in, it really just means like having conversations with other members on social media. If that's something that you're interested in, please email me. We want to get some help with that. We think it's more impactful when members talk to each other than when there's like the voice of the moderator telling you, stuff. So we really want to get like members talking to each other. So if you're interested in that, please email me. We would love your help, even if you can do like, 20 minutes a month, that helps us. So I'm just going to pull up my last slide just so you can see my work email in case you don't have it. This is my email right here. So feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions for any reason whatsoever. And I'll also just drop in the chat the links to these the slide deck and to the handout. You'll see the handout is much more detailed than what we talked about today. And I'll just put my email in here as well. And I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being here. Solidarity.
Thank you, Tamar, for taking time out. Thank you, everybody, for being on the call. I greatly appreciate it. We will see you next month. Thank you.